part number 3 of Prophet Suddenly is coming out. And so it's been quite an interesting journey. It'll be interesting to see where they go with it on part number 3. I think I once mentioned it once they had actually expressed an interest in shooting Prophet Suddenly, part number 3, some months back. I think they had gone to a different church. I can't remember where it was exactly, whether it was in Ghana or whatnot. And so I did express this interest in that, where are they going to go now? Because now after part 2, I think part 1 gave us this idea that it's going to stay within this demonic whole thing. And they went the route which I was not expecting. And part 2 was a very interesting one. Before I go back to part 2 and actually the things that I actually appreciated about part 2 way after it had premiered and way after I had done a review on it. Before I get to that, I want to just remind, the Winlows started doing sketch comedy, Christian sketch comedy. I remember the first time I heard about them years back, and they done this thing of, he just descended from the mountain and God told him that this was his wife. And she was like, I'm sick. This is who I am, whatnot. I have this much time to live. And before you know it, to him, God's word was not enough. He had already run out. And so that was one of the first times I actually saw the Windows. So they started doing sketch comedy, Christian sketch comedy, to be specific, right? And then they moved into Christian life lesson videos. And then there was a period around, the 2017, 18, 19, when dying and going to judgment was a very viral thing. And they got into doing those ones from a truly Christian perspective. A lot of comedians were doing them. I remember some couple of different things, House of Laughter or something like that. They even had a series on that alone. And so they did that, and they did it with a lot more biblical base, right? And then they got into movies, and that was quite an interesting one. And Prophet Suddenly was right up there. Now, they did have another one about scam baiters, love scams, and all those kind of things, which was a very, very interesting one, because when they released that movie, there was a topic that was happening exactly like what you hear in that movie, for those that might not know. Now, I didn't review it by the time because I think there was actually something else. I can't remember exactly what was happening, but there was something else that we were reporting, and that thing we were reporting ended up dragging for like weeks and weeks. Before you knew it, completely forgot about it. So part number 1 of Prophet Suddenly, you'll remember he is introduced to us as a guy with aspiration to go into ministry. It's quite an interesting journey, honestly. He's this guy. I can't remember his name. Every single time I see his face, I remember Kunle, and I think that's his name on the other episode, on the other comedic sketches that they do. And so he's an aspirational kind of minister, one to be. He sees all these people, how they pose, And I remember when I've reviewed that, I said, you have no idea how certain pastors aspire to have certain type of poses of pictures. And you can see it in how people portray themselves. There's always that thing, that move that, you've seen a pose like this, You've seen it with even with Christmas pictures and stuff like that. So he's doing those poses and all those kind of things. He shows his aspiration. But because he can't reach it, he gets into it through the occult. And so that was very much base. He gets into the whole kind of prophesy and telling people the information, and he's learning the spirit. He tells him, don't tell anybody. It becomes a whole operation that he now functions under, and by the end of it, ruins his life, right? That was part 1. Now, when we came to part 2, they phrased it so differently. I became very interested in part 3 after watching part 2. In part 2, they present Mio Kukusheshe, right? So Mio Kukusheshe in part 1 is an occult spirit. She is a diviner. She makes the person a diviner. She gets information and she tells the person, and she allows them to feel this to a point where they get themselves in trouble and whatnot, which is kind of like the classic of Charlie's are all over the place. But in part 2, she is a syndicate. In part 2, she's more organized crime. In part 2, she's more criminal with the mind. It doesn't have to be necessarily a spirit, which I thought was such an interesting one. But the thing that they did at the closing of the film is that they showed the dangers of Mio Kukusheshe in the life of the follower. That was brilliant. Okay? If anything, listen to me, that was dead brilliant. For them to do that, because they showed this chaotic relationship between Mio Kukusheshe, the syndicate, and the prophet fight. They're fighting about money, and it feels like, why don't you just pay it? The prophet is so arrogant, he feels like he's powerful, he can fight Mio Kukusheshe. And at the end of it, there's no chance of him winning. At the end of the movie, it has destroyed the follower, but the prophet reconciles himself with Mio Kukusheshe, the syndicate. That was brilliant. That was some brilliant writing right there. Oh, that was like, there are Hollywood movies that they can have the budget, they can do what, but the way that story was told right there, that was gold. That was gold. I don't know how many times I watched it. Just that ending. Yeah, like you see, like that particular whole point when he's going crazy, the wife is up there, she's about to jump off, and what, there are certain things which I didn't even catch when I watched the film, like the madman, and how the madman says, the 7-story building, whatnot, and I'm like, hey man, 7-story building, man, she was gonna jump, but anyways, didn't make the connection until way after. So part 2 had the syndicate. So we have Mio Kukusheshe in the thingy as in part 1, appearing as a spirit, as a demonic figure, a Beelzebub kind of like, you can kind of call it like that. In part 2, it's a syndicate. She works with information, she gives information, false or what. She makes things go viral. She can run on your image. She can threaten your image in so many ways because she is a syndicate. She's not one person. She knows how to move everything around. So now, where do I think part number 3 is possibly gonna go? Now with the trailer, they just showed Mio Kukusheshe standing there with like things like this disintegration and stuff like that. And so I was wondering, like, are they gonna go technology? Is she still even a prophet? Of course, it's gonna be centered around church. And so this possibly that image. And also in the previous one, there's the confrontation between the people that have suffered, the victims, and also the prophet and his falsehood, and having to deal with the lies and the trauma that brings after a while. In this episode, I'm wondering like what direction would they go, and I can't think of any. I cannot think of any particular direction they will go, which makes the beauty of people's talents. That's what I want to end this video on. This is what makes a case for people's talents. You kind of appreciate people's talents when you just think of the fact that I cannot sit here and actually think of how they would pen this one. And so that already gives you that interest for why to value other people's talents. Because if they're already bringing out the trailer, they've not just written the script, they've gone the whole 9 jazz, they have painted the team has already shot the movie, they've watched and they've determined how to build anticipation for thinking. And so when it does come out, definitely do expect us to think. I didn't see a date there, unless maybe it was in the description or somewhere else, maybe on Facebook or on other platforms that they have. And so looking at the trilogy right now, you have the spirit and also that childhood whole thing. The child used to see when he was younger, but now, it was kind of like a setup so that he is more willing to become a false prophet, claiming that he had visions or something when he was younger. And so we go from a spirit, we come into a syndicate. Maybe we are going to a fugitive. I don't know. But that was that. It's going to be quite an interesting one. I'm very interested in seeing it. On the day when it comes out, everything off. I want to watch. I have just as much excitement towards it, because with what they did with 1 and 2, you just can't build your anticipation to say, do you think they're going to go this way or they're going to go this way? Are they going to use, is prophet suddenly now going to be prophetess? Suddenly? I don't know. I'm trying to think. You know what I'm trying to use the episodes that we have on this channel to see, is she going to be new age? Is she going to be more doctrinal? Spiritual father? Are they going to go that route? Okay, so if they're going, or maybe they're going to go cult this time. Like a cult, like the prophet suddenly is part of a cult. And Mio Kukusheshe is the high priestess of that cult. Or does prophet suddenly do ritual sacrifices? That's just me thinking. The way the intro fades into black and it leaves the red marker 3 there. And so, is he into witchcraft, directly cult, or does he perform ritual sacrifices? There's so many directions for them to go. So that creates the anticipation over the more. I can't wait to see if there's a plot twist this time, or we're just going to get it from the beginning all the way, or whatnot. And so it should be very interesting. Yeah, I'll look out for it. And the trailer will be down in the pinned comments. It's a reality show. Other episodes down there, they'll be down in the pinned comments, and I must see you on a later on episode. Yeah, have a wonderful evening.